Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm Nathan Hale. This is a series about how meaning forms, not all at once, not neatly, and not where we expect it to. Each episode begins with a symbol, not because symbols give us answers, but because they shape how we pay attention long before we know what we believe. They guide us toward questions that don't resolve quickly, and sometimes shouldn't. We're not here to decode myths or flatten metaphors into explanations. We're here to follow them carefully, to see what they do to us as we move with them. Because before belief, before commitment, before action, there's a quieter moment. The moment something catches your attention and doesn't immediately let go. So take a step with me, and let's go down the rabbit hole. You've felt this before. Something catches your attention, not dramatically, not urgently, just catches it. A word you don't recognize in a conversation, a door left slightly open in a building you pass daily, a question with no obvious answer. You could ignore it. You probably should ignore it. But you don't. You pause, you look again, you return. This is where meaning begins. Not with belief, not with understanding, not even with interest, but attention. And for thousands of years, one creature has represented this peculiar state better than any other. There are animals that serve a function, animals that can be trained, classified, and understood. And then there's the cat. Across cultures and centuries, the cat appears again and again as something in between. Neither fully wild nor fully domestic, neither omen nor protector, yet somehow always both. In myth and folklore, cats are not simply animals. They're liminal beings, creatures associated with thresholds, crossings, and boundaries that humans themselves cannot safely traverse. They live at the edge of the known. In ancient Egypt, this role was explicit. Cats were revered not only because they hunted pests, but because they guarded the most valuable boundaries of human life. The home, the granary, a sleeping child. The goddess Bastet was not a distant cosmic ruler. She was intimate, domestic, alert. Her power was not conquest, but vigilance. Cats were seen as her living representatives, sentinels stationed at the threshold between order and chaos, health and disease, safety and intrusion. To harm a cat was to violate that boundary itself. To pay attention is to acknowledge that something exists and might matter. But acknowledgement is not commitment. The cat approaches, but it does not submit. This distance, this gap between noticing and binding, is what the Egyptians understood. The Egyptians carved Bastet with her eyes wide open, staring forward, perpetually attentive, but her hands at rest in her lap. She observes, she does not act. Attention is not action. It is the condition that makes action possible. But as cultures evolve, the cat's threshold role did not disappear. In fact, it multiplied. In Celtic lore, the cat Sith stalked the Scottish Highlands, a fairy creature said to haunt graveyards and crossroads, believed to steal the souls of the newly dead before they could pass on, unless rituals were performed to distract or appease it. Here, the cat becomes a gatekeeper of the afterlife, a being that hovers between the living and the dead, deciding what may pass and what may not. In several Asian traditions, Thai, Burmese, and Buddhist, cats were believed to serve as temporary vessels for holy or noble souls. After death, a spirit might inhabit a cat before completing its journey to paradise. The animal was treated with reverence, not because it was divine, but because it carried something in transition. Again, the cat is not the destination, it is the passage. This belief persists in subtler forms. Cats are said to see ghosts, to stare at empty corners, to react to presences humans cannot perceive. Their nocturnal habits, reflective eyes, and sudden alertness feed the idea that they could see beyond the veil of ordinary perception. The cat becomes a spiritual gatekeeper, positioned at the threshold of human awareness. Medieval Europe translated this unease into fear. Cats, especially black cats, became associated with witches, the occult, and forbidden knowledge. As familiars, they were thought to allow witches to move between worlds, human and supernatural, visible and hidden. This association was not accidental. Familiars were not servants, they were intermediaries. They crossed boundaries on behalf of their human counterparts. The cat's independence made it suspect. Its curiosity made it dangerous. Its refusal to obey made it untrustworthy. But even in fear, the symbolic role remains intact. The cat is one who goes where humans cannot or should not go. By the time we reach modernity, the cat has become shorthand for something specific: independent observation, selective engagement, curiosity without obligation to explain itself. Lewis Carroll understood this perfectly. The Cheshire cat appears and vanishes at will. It gives advice but accepts no responsibility for whether Alice follows it. When Alice asks which way she should go, it responds with perfect attention logic. That depends a good deal on where you want to get to. It has noticed her question, oriented toward her confusion, I should say, but accepts no obligation to resolve it. This is attention in its purest form, present but uncommitted, engaged but unbound, interested but free to withdraw at any moment. In Japan, this attunement takes a gentler form. The maneki neko, the beckoning cat, is placed at the threshold of shops and homes to invite prosperity and protection. Its raised paw is not a command, but an invitation. Fortune does not enter by force, it is welcomed across a boundary. Even knowledge itself was once guarded by cats. In 10th century Japan, cats were kept in temples and pagodas to protect sacred manuscripts from rodents. They were guardians of texts, protectors of memory and meaning, long before humans could preserve such things mechanically. Across all these traditions, a pattern emerges. The cat is not a teacher in the human sense. It does not explain. It doesn't moralize. It appears. It watches from doorways, crossroads, gravesides, margins, and shadows. It lingers at points of transition, places where one state ends and another begins. There's a proverb most people think they know. Curiosity killed the cat. It's usually offered as a warning, a cultural reflex against probing too far, asking too much, or crossing invisible lines. But historically, that line is already a revision. In Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable, published in 1898, the older form is recorded differently. Care killed the cat. And then Brewer adds a remark that quietly changes the entire symbolic landscape. A cat has 9 lives, but care would wear them all out. This matters, because here curiosity is not yet the culprit. Care is. Worry, anxious fixation, the grinding persistence that refuses release. And yet, alongside this warning sits another motif. The cat has 9 lives. Even in this earlier formulation, danger and resilience already coexist. The culture is already holding 2 truths at once. The cat is exposed to risk, and the cat survives repeatedly, but not endlessly. The symbolic field is already unstable. This is how symbols evolve. Not through neat definitions, but through pressure and proximity. Over time, curiosity moves into the foreground. Care becomes curiosity. Anxiety becomes exploration. The warning shifts from internal strain to external probing. And eventually, the hybrid form emerges. Curiosity killed the cat, but it also gave it 9 lives. Whether spoken explicitly or implicitly, the logic is the same. Exploration carries risk. Avoidance carries a different cost. Survival lies somewhere in between. The cat becomes the perfect vessel for this paradox. It doesn't remain safely on one side of the threshold, but it doesn't linger indefinitely in danger either. Its curiosity leads it outward. Its intuition pulls it back. The myth of 9 lives expresses this rhythm. The cat survives falls that should be fatal. It escapes traps that should close. It returns from danger again and again. But 9 lives is not immortality. It is finite resilience. Each survival narrows the margin. Each return consumes a life. Each brush with danger leaves a trace. Brewer's remark captures this precisely. A cat has 9 lives, but care would wear them all out. Not curiosity alone, not danger alone, but unrelenting exposure. The cat can approach risk, but it cannot dwell there endlessly. This is why the cat's curiosity is inseparable from restraint. Cats don't need to reason their way into exploration. They don't narrate their decisions. They sense, they pause, they retreat. Their curiosity is not frantic, it's measured. This is what distinguishes the cat from symbols of reckless inquiry. The cat does not seek mastery, it seeks orientation. This is why cats have long been associated with intuition and prophetic sight. Their nocturnal habits, reflective eyes, and sudden fixations on seemingly empty spaces gave rise to the belief that they perceive what humans cannot. But symbolically, the claim is subtler. The cat notices before it knows. It responds before it explains. It embodies a form of knowing that precedes justification. This symbolic logic resurfaces unexpectedly in modern science. When physicist Erwin Schrödinger proposed his famous thought experiment, he chose a cat, perhaps without fully realizing that the symbol he reached for already carried centuries of threshold logic within it. A cat, sealed in a box, alive and dead until observed. The box is a threshold. The unopened lid preserves possibility. Observation collapses uncertainty. This is not merely a scientific paradox, it is a mythic one. Long before quantum mechanics, folklore had already located the cat in overlapping states, safe and dangerous, familiar and uncanny, alive and nearly lost. The experiment works because the symbol already exists. This is why superstition persists. A black cat crossing your path does not cause misfortune. It reorients perception. Once noticed, you're no longer moving through the world unguarded. You're alert, cautious, attuned. The cat does not introduce danger. It reveals that danger was always possible. This is the deeper lesson hidden in the Proverbs' evolution. Curiosity is not condemned because it is immoral. It is dangerous because it exposes us. But avoidance is dangerous too. The cat survives because it does neither completely. It explores but withdraws. It approaches but retreats. It risks but does not remain exposed indefinitely. By the end of this section, the cat is no longer a cautionary tale or a lucky charm. It has become something more precise, a model of how engagement with uncertainty must be paced if it is to be endured. Curiosity can kill, but without curiosity, nothing survives. Resilience is real, but it is not infinite. Meaning begins when curiosity returns. It collapses when exposure becomes unrelenting. By now, the cat has done its work. It has not taught us a lesson, nor has it explained itself. It is simply shown a way of approaching the unknown. Approach, pause, withdraw, return. This rhythm is older than theory, older than psychology, older than philosophy. It is the rhythm of attention. Attention is the first turn of the head. It's the moment when something interrupts the flow of experience, not forcefully, not urgently, but just enough to draw orientation. You notice, you look again. You do not yet know what it means, only that it matters enough to hold for a moment longer. This is where meaning begins. Not with explanation, not with certainty, but with orientation. Here's what's crucial about attention. It requires no belief, no evaluation, no decision about whether what you're noticing is true, false, good, bad, important, trivial. The cat doesn't need to know what the moving thing is to watch it. Watching is prior to knowing. Attention is prior to judgment. At any moment, you exist in a field of possible stimuli. Sights, sounds, sensations, thoughts, memories. Most of it you ignore, not consciously. You just don't orient toward it. Then something changes, a pattern shifts, a contrast appears, a repetition breaks, and you attend. Attention is the mechanism that says this might be relevant, not this is relevant, not this matters, just it might. The cat's head turns, that's all. No commitment has been made, no decision has been reached. The possibility space has simply narrowed. And crucially, the cat can withdraw. Attention can be given and rescinded in the same moment. You notice something, consider it, dismiss it, all in 3 seconds. This is the attention's defining characteristic. Attention is orientation without obligation. It costs almost nothing. It commits to nothing. It promises nothing. And yet, without it, nothing else can begin. The cat belongs here because the first threshold is forgiving. Not all thresholds are the same. Some demand permanent commitment. Some carry irreversible cost, but attention, the first threshold, is forgiving. Nothing binds you yet. At this stage, nothing irreversible has happened. You can look away, you can disengage, you can turn later, or not at all. Attention does not demand loyalty, sacrifice, or even belief. It only asks whether something is compelling enough to return to. This is why the cat never gives immediate chase. It never coerces, it never commands, it waits. And in waiting, it tests something essential. Whether attention is merely reactive, or whether it can orient itself voluntarily. But forgiving thresholds can be exhausted. When attention pulls in too many directions at once, curiosity does not deepen, it scatters. Novelty stops inspiring and begins to overwhelm. Orientation collapses into agitation. In a world saturated with stimuli, attention is constantly hijacked. Alert headlines, novelty cycles. These do not orient attention, they fragment it. They pull the gaze without allowing it to settle. Modern life has become very good at capturing attention. Headlines designed to interrupt, images optimized to catch the eye, notifications calibrated to demand notice. We are surrounded by things screaming, "Look at me!" and we look for a second, 2 seconds, maybe 3. But attention that cannot persist is not enough. You can attend to something important and then immediately forget it existed, because attention by itself builds nothing. It opens nothing. It commits you to nothing. And when that happens, the cost is not theoretical, it is felt. There is a recognizable feeling that appears when symbolic systems stop doing their work. When orientation weakens, anxiety rises, social trust falters, identity becomes unstable, communication polarizes, meaning becomes contested, novelty overwhelms instead of inspires. Psychologists describe this as disorientation stress. Sociologists call it anomie. Philosophers speak of a meaning crisis. Different disciplines, different names, the same signal. But humans have felt it before, because whenever meaning collapses, myth returns. Not as escapism or fantasy, but as orientation. We can see it everywhere right now. Multiverses and branching realities, AI gods and AI monsters, apocalyptic narratives, rebirth narratives, the return of astrology, the explosion of conspiracy mythologies, nostalgia cycles accelerating, and a deep hunger for symbolic clarity. This is not irrationality. It is hunger for symbols that help attention find its footing again. Because when orientation fails, explanation is not what we need first. We need something that tells us where we are. This is why myth reemerges precisely when symbolic elasticity has been stretched thin. Myth, done well, is not an answer. It is a compass. And this brings us back to the cat. The cat does not resolve uncertainty. It teaches how to live with it without dissolving into panic or freezing into avoidance. It shows us how to approach without grasping, how to withdraw without abandoning, how to return without obsession. The cat teaches attentional discipline. Not discipline as control, but discipline as pacing. So the cat stands at the threshold. It has noticed something. It is oriented toward it. It has moved closer. But now a question emerges. Will it continue? Will this moment of attention become something more than a moment? Will curiosity deepen into interest? Will interest persist into memory? Because some things we notice disappear immediately. Some things we notice stay. Not because we decide they should, not because we force ourselves to remember, but because they return, or we return to them. Attention that returns becomes something else, something more than noticing. But we're not ready to name what that is just yet. This is where we begin, not with answers, not with conclusions, not with commitments or decisions or meanings, but with this. The moment when something catches your attention and you don't yet know why it matters, for that matter, if it matters, or what you're supposed to do about it. You're just oriented, present, curious, uncommitted. The Egyptians were right to make this sacred because this moment, this simple, costless, obligation-free moment of noticing is where everything begins. And this is the quiet premise of everything that follows in this season. Meaning does not collapse at once. It erodes when attention no longer knows where to rest. When everything demands attention, nothing holds it. When curiosity is flooded rather than guided, resilience wears thin. As Brewer warned long ago, the cat has 9 lives, but care would wear them all out. Unrelenting exposure exhausts even the most resilient symbols. This is why the season begins here, not with catastrophe, not with solutions, but with the smallest, most fragile threshold, attention. Because if attention cannot orient itself, nothing that follows can endure. Some curiosities disappear, some endure. Why? In the next episode, we will explore the condition that allows attention to return rather than collapse. Not darkness, not blindness, but shadow. Because curiosity does not survive total illumination, and it cannot form in total darkness. It survives in the space between. Next time, join me as we explore light and shadow and discover why mystery sustains what clarity exhausts.